The time had come for me to wrap things up. The Greybeards had summoned me, and it was urgent. Whiterun was calling, and Erikr had to be dealt with fast. I sifted through his documents, catching a glimpse of chaos around the Blue Palace. The court was disbanded, no doubt reeling from the shockwave after the Dragonborn summons. I moved through the corridors, finally reaching Falk's office. With a knock, I stepped in and found the steward buried in paperwork. Falk! The best steward in all of Solitude, I greeted, earning a raised eyebrow and a curious glance at the pile of documents in my hands. Flicking through them, I revealed damning evidence of illegal trade ties to the Dainty Sloden Thieves Guild, a plan to sell Solitude's buildings to the Thalmor, and money laundering schemes. Falk seemed overwhelmed, but stayed quiet as I continued my expose. Just when I was about to dig deeper into another folder, he stopped me. Vec, slow down! But there was no time for slowing down. The web of corruption was far too intricate, and I was already deep in the game. What is all this? Falk picked up the folder filled with Melloran's experiments and looked confused. Is this all from Erikr? How did you get this? I rubbed my chin thoughtfully and motioned for him to come closer. Elisif asked me to handle Erikr. He's been hassling her about remarriage and all that. So I broke into his house and went through his stuff. Falk sighed, looking down. Fair enough. What do you want to do with all this? I picked up another letter. Involvement in drug trafficking, selling confidential information. This seems like treason to me. This letter looks like it's addressed to Maven Blackbriar. Who else would MBB stand for? I tossed it to him, and he read through it. It was about escorting some rare material. I've only heard of Jaren root once, in a compendium on poisonous plants. Falk grabbed another letter from me, scanning it closely. Why would they? The letter mentioned a request for Jaren root, vampire dust, black soul gems, and other harmful ingredients. The Jaren root caught my attention. If a shipment of that stuff reached Skyrim, it would explain the fresh root Asher gives the listener. I thought it might be best to get rid of these materials. Falk sighed again. I'll handle this, Vec. Do you want me to? His voice trailed off, leaving the question hanging. Nah, just tell the Jarl my job is done. Falk leaned back, rubbing his eyes. This is going to cause some trouble. You were right about this being treason. Another execution looms this time. Erikr. I smirked. Solitude's about to get cleaner. Falk handled the Dainty Slode, a crippled pirate ship too weak to flee, its crimes veiled behind low numbers. I asked him to grab a floating purple gem if found a future favor for someone deep in the guild's shadows. Falk caught on it was a stone. He'd heard collectors paid well. I hadn't, but I nodded anyway. No move on the stolen intel, but he'd alert the general. Then I asked, report Stormcloak camps or end them. Falk left no kill orders without Legion say so. I had, of course, forgotten to ask them. Thunder rolled above us. The Greybeards, I said. Things are shifting. Falk looked up, piecing the storm to prophecy. I shut him down with a whisper. Thalmor are listening. No Nord myths in Solitude, not now. He saw the warning in my eyes and nodded. I nodded. I'm heading to Whiterun and maybe beyond, gathering a few things. And here's a tip. To take down a bird, you cut off its wings. Falk would get what I meant when the dragon rumor spread. He gave a brief nod. Good luck on your journey. I stepped back, heading to Sybil's place. I knocked, waited a second, and she flung the door open. What's up, Vec? I flashed a grin. Morning, sleepyhead. She clicked her tongue and began closing the door, but I called out, I've got some research for you. She rubbed her face, sighed, then asked, do you know what that earthquake was about? I raised an eyebrow. You don't know? It was the Greybeard's call. She frowned. The Thuum. That might require some study. So what are you offering me? I smiled. 4 things. She opened the door wider, letting me in. I quickly pulled out some Stalrum and dragon bones. Can this be forged from these? She examined the materials with a curious look. Stalrum and dragon bone? Interesting. I'll need to study these more. I nodded. Not much of either left, though. Is this conversation helpful so far? She raised an eyebrow, her gaze sharp as I revealed my latest project. What else do you have? She asked, not missing a beat. I pulled out Dawnbreaker, its gleam cutting through the air like a blade. She recoiled instantly, her face twisted in a scowl. Keep that away from me, she snapped. I shrugged, storing the artifact away. I figured you wouldn't want to get too close. But I need help changing its destiny, much like Azura's star. She leaned back, an amused smirk playing on her lips. You're addicted, aren't you? Maybe I need an intervention if you keep showing up with more Daedric junk. I rolled my eyes. Long story short, Meridia has taken an interest in me. Not wanting to serve her forever, I made a bet. I need to make Dawnbreaker stronger than ever. She gave me a considering look, her interest piqued. Meridia must really have a thing for you. She doesn't make deals like that often. I didn't mention how Meridia knew of my past with her, keeping that little secret close. So, can you help me? I asked, hoping for more than just answers. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. I'll help, but I won't touch Dawnbreaker. I have ideas on how to strengthen it and a few ways to weaken it if that's your thing. I nodded, relieved. Then, with a slight grin, I pulled out all the pieces of the razor. Her eyes went wide. How many Daedric princes are you playing with? Fixing Azura's star was one thing, but this? She shook her head, incredulous. I laughed softly. Want to give it a try? I nodded. I'm heading to Whiterun and maybe beyond, gathering a few things. And here's a tip. To take down a bird, you cut off its wings. Falk would get what I meant when the dragon rumors spread. He gave a brief nod. Good luck on your journey. I stepped back, heading to Sabile's place. I knocked, waited a second, and she flung the door open. What's up, Vec? I flashed a grin. Morning, sleepyhead. She clicked her tongue and began closing the door. But I called out. I've got some research for you. She rubbed her face, sighed, then asked, Do you know what that earthquake was about? I raised an eyebrow. You don't know? It was the Greybeard's call. She frowned. The Thuum. That might require some study. So, what are you offering me? I smiled. 4 things. She opened the door wider, letting me in. I quickly pulled out some Stalrim and dragon bones. Can this be forged from these? She examined the materials with a curious look. Stalrim and dragon bone? Interesting. I'll need to study these more. I nodded. Not much of either left, though. Is this conversation helpful so far? I gave her a quick glance. Yeah, pretty much. You ever hear of anyone like me? Not the Daedric stuff. Just someone a bit stranger than the average person. She shook her head. Actually, I know exactly who you're talking about. A colleague from the College of Winterhold mentioned a student with some weird habits. A player at the College of Winterhold, huh? Who are we talking about, and what are these habits? I asked. She sighed. A fence named Enther sells rare ingredients. The student's name is Gwen. Enther mentioned an overuse of the word like. I nodded. Definitely a player. Thanks for the info, I said. Sabile raised an eyebrow. That's it? It's complicated. I can't really go into it, I replied. She rolled her eyes. Fine, get out. I need sleep. Fair enough. I turned and headed out. I had a couple of things to handle before heading to Whiterun. First, I had to let Legion know I was leaving. And second, I needed sleep. I had some perk points to allocate, and I'd been putting off leveling up. Chapter 62, Level Up. I headed to Castle Druid to brief Canary on my expedition. Apparently, she wanted to come along. I wasn't exactly thrilled about having a second follower. Vyri was fine in my opinion, but she did hold a certain authority over me as my boss throughout the Legion questline, even if she was technically paying me. I received a monthly wage of 5 gold and 20 silver coins, though the silver coins were a bit annoying to deal with, showing up as decimals in my inventory. It wasn't my favorite, but extra hands were always useful, especially since my followers were never helpful when it came to standing in doorways. Eventually, after a long day, I found myself drifting to sleep. I woke up in the dreamscape of leveling up, having figured out how to delay my leveling process, though I was only greeted with 4 level ups. However, I was granted 8 perk points, which felt pretty good. I assumed that leveling up gave a random amount of perk points, ranging from 1 to 3. I decided to invest in more health, which seemed to improve my physical fitness. I hadn't noticed it much before since I rarely put more than 1 or 2 points into it. With the addition of more mana and stamina, I could run further and use magic longer, but I didn't plan to prioritize health much. When it came to perk points, my trees were uneven, and I was surprised to see my one-handed skill at 43 points. The one-handed tree wasn't my favorite though. The dual-wielding branch was far more appealing, and while axes had their use, especially with higher decapitation chances, swords were the go-to for unique weapon. I had no choice but to invest 3 points into the bladesman skill, even if it was a bit frustrating. Vyri was fine in my opinion, but she did hold a certain authority over me as my boss throughout the Legion questline, even if she was technically paying me. I received a monthly wage of 5 gold and 20 silver coins, though the silver coins were a bit annoying to deal with, showing up as decimals in my inventory. It wasn't my favorite, but extra hands were always useful, especially since my followers were never helpful when it came to standing in doorways. Eventually, after a long day, I found myself drifting to sleep. I woke up in the dreamscape of leveling up, having figured out how to delay my leveling process, though I was only greeted with 4 level ups. However, I was granted 8 perk points, which felt pretty good. I assumed that leveling up gave a random amount of perk points, ranging from 1 to 3. I decided to invest in more health, which seemed to improve my physical fitness. I hadn't noticed it much before, since I rarely put more than 1 or 2 points into it. With the addition of more mana and stamina, I could run further and use magic longer, but I didn't plan to prioritize health much. When it came to perk points, my trees were uneven, and I was surprised to see my one-handed skill at 43 points. The one-handed tree wasn't my favorite, though. The dual-wielding branch was far more appealing, and while axes had their use, especially with higher decapitation chances, swords were the go-to for unique weapons. I had no choice but to invest 3 points into the bladesman skill, even if it was a bit frustrating. I blinked away the remnants of dream space, jarred awake just as the fusion completed, no result, no vision, just raw silence. Groggy but driven, I checked my spellbook and froze. A new tab had appeared. Fused spells. 1 entry frost, flesh, a hybrid of alteration and destruction. Curious. I toggled the mark beside it. The tab vanished, and the spell split itself into both categories. Another toggle, and it returned, seamless and singular. The spell's note was cryptic. Created by Mevek Frostwain through a blend of Atmaron Legacy, Stalrim Craft, and Arcane Schools, perhaps guided by fate or glitch. Frost Cloak woven into ebony flesh, but more frost flesh pulsed with codework I hadn't fully written. Did others fail like I once did, not from lack of dream mana, but because they couldn't see the variables? I stared at the morning light cutting into Proudspire Manor, the weight of possibility humming through the walls like a buried dev command waiting to be triggered. Vyri was fine in my opinion, but she did hold a certain authority over me as my boss throughout the Legion questline, even if she was technically paying me. I received a monthly wage of 5 gold and 20 silver coins, though the silver coins were a bit annoying to deal with, showing up as decimals in my inventory. It wasn't my favorite, but extra hands were always useful, especially since my followers were never helpful when it came to standing in doorways. Eventually, after a long day, I found myself drifting to sleep. I woke up in the dreamscape of leveling up, having figured out how to delay my leveling process, though I was only greeted with 4 level ups. However, I was granted 8 perk points, which felt pretty good. I assumed that leveling up gave a random amount of perk points ranging from 1 to 3. I decided to invest in more health, which seemed to improve my physical fitness. I hadn't noticed it much before since I rarely put more than 1 or 2 points into it. With the addition of more mana and stamina, I could run further and use magic longer, but I didn't plan to prioritize health much. When it came to perk points, my trees were uneven, and I was surprised to see my one-handed skill at 43 points. The one-handed tree wasn't my favorite though. The dual-wielding branch was far more appealing, and while axes had their use, especially with higher decapitation chances, swords were the go-to for unique weapons. I had no choice but to invest 3 points into the bladesman skill, even if it was a bit frustrating. Vyri squinted through the small window, her voice low. How are we going to handle this? Canary clicked her tongue in a knowing way. It's a trap. That tree was cut down. Watch out for bandits, I chuckled. You'll see why I had this carriage specially made. Reins in hand, I slowed the horse, giving a quiet command. On my signal, use the hatch on the roof. Behind me, the others shifted, but I focused on the group of bandits emerging from the rocks. A man wearing the mark of a Breton smirked. You were expecting us? I grinned. Travelers should always be cautious. A Nord woman sneered. We prefer opportunists. I kept my smile, knowing well that Skyrim's bandits outnumbered its citizens, many drifting under banners like the Stormcloaks, or simply surviving. Fair enough. So tell me, are you dodging the Imperial draft or sympathizing with the Stormcloaks? I threw out some meaningless words to confuse them. I hear the Lunar Moon Band is secretly supplying weapons to the Stormcloaks. It was a lie I made up on the spot, but it made the bandits hesitate. They weren't familiar with the name, but something clicked. Still, they kept their weapons pointed at me. The Breton man asked, What's in the carriage? I grinned. Canaries. He gave me a strange look, but Canary, on cue, shot up from the roof. An arrow took the Breton out cleanly. The other 4 were stunned, but before they could react, I leaped from the carriage, Dawnbreaker already in my hand, crashing into one of the bandits. The unexpected strike triggered a skill up, but I didn't bother checking. Vyri squinted through the small window, her voice low. How are we going to handle this? Canary clicked her tongue in a knowing way. It's a trap! That tree was cut down! Watch out for bandits, I chuckled. You'll see why I had this carriage specially made. Reins in hand, I slowed the horse, giving a quiet command. On my signal, use the hatch on the roof. Behind me, the others shifted, but I focused on the group of bandits emerging from the rocks. A man wearing the mark of a Breton smirked. You were expecting us? I grinned. Travelers should always be cautious. A Nord woman sneered. We prefer opportunists. I kept my smile, knowing well that Skyrim's bandits outnumbered its citizens, many drifting under banners like the Stormcloaks or simply surviving. Fair enough. So tell me, are you dodging the Imperial draft or sympathizing with the Stormcloaks? I threw out some meaningless words to confuse them. I hear the Lunar Moon Band is secretly supplying weapons to the Stormcloaks. It was a lie I made up on the spot, but it made the bandits hesitate. They weren't familiar with the name, but something clicked. Still, they kept their weapons pointed at me. The Breton man asked, What's in the carriage? I grinned. Canaries. He gave me a strange look, but Canary, on cue, shot up from the roof. An arrow took the Breton out cleanly. The other 4 were stunned, but before they could react, I leaped from the carriage, Dawnbreaker already in my hand, crashing into one of the bandits. The unexpected strike triggered a skill up, but I didn't bother checking. I drove Dawnbreaker into the bandit's gut, and as I lifted my gaze, Canary had already downed 2 of the others with swift arrows. The last one sprinted towards a fallen log, desperate to escape. Canary was ready to take them out too, but I shouted, "Pin them! They know something I want!" Her arrow shot true, embedding deep into the bandit's leg, causing them to howl in pain. I grabbed a cloth from my inventory and pressed it against their mouth to silence the screams. "Shh, I'm pulling the arrow out," I whispered. It was the Nord woman from before. She shook her head, pleading with her eyes, but I yanked the arrow free. She screamed through the cloth. I grinned. "One chance. What do you know about lunar weapons?" Her eyes widened, but she nodded. "The Silent Moon Camp. It's east of here. They only strike at night. Their weapons burn like no fire I've seen, enchanted by some greater force. That's all I know. Please, spare me," she begged. I ran from the draft. Before she could finish, I slashed her throat, her eyes filled with betrayal. I sheathed Dawnbreaker and turned back to the carriage. Vairi was rummaging through one of the bandits' gear, looking up at me. "What? They have decent equipment." I shook my head. "It's not that you're looting wrong." I grabbed the dead bandit's body, dragging it toward her. She dropped like a rag doll, bare to the bone-white sky, and Vairi didn't blink, just followed my instructions with clinical precision. Strip the fallen, turn the gear inside out, and Skyrim's wildlife handles the cleanup efficient and brutal. Gold clinked to the ground, flint and steel gleaming in the dirt. "It worked!" She grinned, and from the carriage, Canary sneered. "You're sick!" "I just pointed," says the Imperial torturer in exile. Her shrug was practically a confession. "All right, fine. But this carriage? You planned this?" She could tell it wasn't just luck. Truth was, I'd meant it for something else entirely. Designs ruined by Solitude's incompetence. Her voice snapped me back. "Lunar bandits?" I gave her the short version. "An ancient forge that only wakes under the stars, enchanting even the unskilled." She raised a brow curious now. "Nord work?" I nodded. "Collapsed outpost. Probably tried to make soulfire weapons for Dwemer War. Failed. But the forge is still there. If we get the time, I'm going." She gave a sharp nod. "Understood." "I'll take whatever inn they've got," I said, sinking into my thoughts. "I'll come along," Vairi chimed in from behind. "If it's about the moon, it could get interesting." Canary shot her a quick look before slipping back into the carriage. I unfolded my map, eyes scanning the terrain. The bandits who attacked us were probably in cahoots with the ones further ahead. Robber's Gorge was just up the road. Looking at the area, I could already see it. A small trap, with the main force targeting Whiterun. Odd, considering Solitude gets most of its supplies by sea. Why would the big guns be facing Whiterun? Then it hit me. The Khajiit! They definitely use this route. Normally, bandits leave the Khajiit alone, but since I've been helping their caravan, things might have shifted. If they've already attacked, even better. If not, I'll stop it. Canary popped out again. "What's going on?" she asked. "More bandits ahead. Looks like they're setting a trap for a Khajiit caravan. I'm going to check it out." Vairi perked up. "Are we leaving the carriage?" I turned to Canary. "Can you drive it?" She sighed, but nodded. "Sure," I smiled. "Take care of Philip." Vairi raised an eyebrow. "You named it Philip? Isn't it a girl? Do you like this personality?" Canary locked eyes with me and Vairi sighed. "Let's just get back to hunting bandits," she said. "Yeah, that sounds like the best plan," I replied, rubbing the back of my neck as I walked toward Robber's Gorge. Canary hopped out of the carriage, taking Philip's reins, while Vairi followed me up the trail. The path led directly to a bandit camp, where 4 were stationed, watching the road. It seemed like there were at least 3 more in the camp, but none of them appeared to be leaders. They had set up some wire traps, and I gestured for Vairi to step carefully over them as we crept along the shadows. Moving quietly, we reached a spot just below 2 bandits. I pointed out the other 2 who were standing on the road and signaled for Vairi to get in position. With her ready, I pulled out my fishing rod and after a quick nod, cast the line around the 2 bandits. They froze in confusion. "What the?" One stammered before I yanked the line, pulling them into a makeshift railing. They crashed into it, but the structure surprisingly held. They tumbled over, and I quickly drew Dawnbreaker, slicing through one with a critical hit. The other slammed to the ground, and I drove my sword through him. I turned to see Vairi had already dealt with one, smashing the other's head in. But the final bandit had a shield, and Vairi couldn't land a solid blow. Canary glared at me as Vairi sighed, giving up. "Let's just kill more bandits," she said. "That's the plan," I replied, rubbing my neck. I started heading up the path toward Robber's Gorge, Canary hopping out of the carriage to grab Philip's reins. Vyri followed as we moved toward the camp. We crept close enough to spot 4 bandits watching the road. Too many in this world, but they were only minor thugs, not leaders. They had set traps, but we managed to avoid them by staying low. We snuck to a position right beneath 2 of them, while the other 2 were further up the road. I signaled Vyri, and she readied her mace. With her in place, I pulled out my fishing rod and cast the line around the 2 bandits. Their confusion was immediate. I yanked hard, pulling them into their makeshift railing. The impact was jarring, but it held up, and they tumbled over. I drew my sword, slicing through one with a critical strike, while the second crashed to the ground. I turned to see Vyri had dealt with one by smashing his skull, but the last one, armed with a shield, was proving a challenge for her. Do you like this personality? I hurled the iron dagger mist by a mile, but it got his attention, and that was all Vyri needed. Pendulum came crashing down like divine judgment, cracking his skull with a wet pop that made me flinch like someone smashing a melon. I didn't know if it should feel this easy. Was everyone else like this? No time to dwell, more bandits approached. I unreeled my fishing line and tossed it to Vyri, who instantly got it and flanked around. 2 voices rounded the corner, one spotted blood, the other muttered about assassin. As the first crept forward, the line jerked. He stumbled, I dropped it, and lunged at the other. Steel clanged, then with a grin I fired a freezing bolt straight to his face. He toppled like a statue. Just in case, I drove the blade down. Meanwhile, Vyri hammered the fallen one. Turned out he was an orc and took extra effort. With them done, I finally spoke. The chiefs likely holed up in that wood cabin. Vyri nodded, called me boss, and melted into the shadows while I set my sights on the next fight. His leggings held him tight, immobilizing him. The hammer swung wildly, but I was quick, slashing with precision between each of his swings. You son of a... He groaned, furious. With a mighty effort, he tore off his leggings, breaking free, and swung for my head. I ducked, narrowly avoiding the blow, but when he swung again, I caught it. With a sudden lunge, I slashed his leg, and he screamed in agony. The hammer slipped from his grasp. You monster! He shouted, but I just smirked. Maybe I am, I replied coolly, slicing through his other leg. His scream pierced the air. Just kill me! He begged. I pointed my blade at his throat, coldly asking, tell me about the Khajiit you robbed. His eyes widened. Is that what this is about? Did that coward send you? I pressed. So you robbed the Khajiit. Where are the rest? He sneered. Skinned and sold. Merchants pay a pretty penny for Khajiit fur. I rolled my eyes, not caring for his words, and finished the job by slicing through his neck. His leggings secured him in place, and he couldn't move an inch. The hammer swung wildly, but I was faster, slicing through his defenses with precision. You bastard! I'll kill you! He snarled, tearing off his leggings in a desperate attempt to break free. He swung the hammer at my head, but I ducked, only to catch it on the second swing. With a swift move, I lunged and struck his leg. The blade cut through, and his scream echoed. I pulled the hammer from his grasp. You monster! He spat. I smirked. Maybe I am. I cut through his other leg, his scream filling the air. Arg! Just kill me! He begged, but I only pointed my weapon at his throat. Tell me about the Khajiit you robbed, and maybe I will. He blinked, realization dawning. Did that coward of a cat send you? He hissed, admitting they had robbed the Khajiit. So, just one ran? Where are the others? I asked. He sneered. Skinned and sold. Merchants pay a pretty penny for Khajiit fur. I rolled my eyes and ended it, slicing through his neck without another word. I knew there had to be a secret caveat, just felt coded into the layout. But first, loot protocol. Grab the Black Arrow 5-2 off the tablet skill book, obviously for later reading. Then came the shout from Vyri. Canary's got the carriage up here. Start loading? Affirmative, confirmed. Supplies incoming. But the real lead, the bandit chief had a hatch, and I had to check it. Found some gold, silver, and a white amulet Carjo's moon charm so he hadn't left yet. Pocketed the key and dove into the hatch. Muddy drop, barrels full of provisions, and then voice echoing from the water. Hello? Someone was down there. Grabbed the bandit chief's journal, flipped through nothing but static. Tossed it. Nice view, sure, but just another cave. Until the Khajiit's voice rang out again. Hey, are you a bandit? I knew there had to be a secret caveat, just felt coded into the layout. But first, loot protocol. Grab the Black Arrow 5-2 off the tablet skill book, obviously for later reading. Then came the shout from Vyri. Canary's got the carriage up here. Start loading? Affirmative confirmed. Supplies incoming. But the real lead? The bandit chief had a hatch, and I had to check it. Found some gold, silver, and a white amulet Carjo's moon charm so he hadn't left yet. Pocketed the key and dove into the hatch. Muddy drop, barrels full of provisions, and then voice echoing from the water. Hello? Someone was down there. Grabbed the bandit chief's journal, flipped through nothing but static, tossed it. Nice view, sure, but just another cave. Until the Kai didn't belong here. One of the Khajiit growled, "Shut up, Karjo." I glanced at the 3 Khajiit tied up before me. 2 were familiar, Karjo and his boss Akari, and the last was Zainabi, though she was gagged. I lifted my faceplate. I'm a friend of the caravan. Risad is helping me set up a trade route in Solitude. Akari's eyes widened. "Ah, you're the strange man from another place." I nodded. "Yeah, from Atmora." "Need me to cut you loose?" Karjo simply sliced through his bindings with his claws. "We could have freed ourselves," he chuckled. Akari, as she freed the others, explained, "We've deals with most bandit camps. Those who break it, though, they must be dealt with." I tossed a moon amulet to Karjo. "My amulet," he exclaimed, catching it. "Thank you, not just for dealing with the bandits, but for bringing this back." I feared I'd lost it. Akari added, "It was a sister's heirloom." "I'll reward you with gold," Zainabi spoke up. "If you need a fence, I can help." I nodded, wondering how the caravan would handle the bandits who'd robbed them. They usually paid a tithe, but now they'd have to decide on something else. Ajit's voice rang out again. "Hey, are you a bandit?" Not every bandit is up for making deals, but I think I've figured out why they attacked you. I walked back over to the journal I'd tossed earlier. Check this out. I tossed it to Akari, who quickly flipped through its pages. The chief wanted to leave Skyrim, but many here are bandits because of the Civil War, and others come here for freedom. Akari was right. Bandits were less of an issue in other parts of Tamriel. The security here is weak. But hey, are these your supplies? I pointed to some barrels behind us. Zainabi shook her head. "We carry what we sell on us. Some of it's ours, but not all of it." "That coward of a chief took what we had and stashed it away," Karjo grumbled. "He even stole my armor and wore it." "Wait, that was his armor?" No big deal. "Let's get out of here, shall we?" Zainabi scowled. "Where's the chief? I want to deal with his corpse." I raised an eyebrow and pointed to the ladder. Up there, I left him for my companions to loot. Zainabi marched up without hesitation. I turned to the others. "What was that about?" Karjo sighed. "I'll go calm her down." Akari leaned in, speaking quietly. "The chief threatened to, well, skin Zainabi's fur after. Ahem, I'm sure you get it. Some people treat Khajiit like property, even skinning them for fur to line their armor. Do you like this personality? Zainabi had a brother once, but he's gone now." "So she's sensitive to threats like that?" I asked, my frown deepening. "I get it." I rubbed my chin thoughtfully. "Ever deal with many Khajiit fur collectors?" Akari shook her head. "Just one, really." "We handled her, strung her up like a Spriggan would. It happens. At least some people, like you, understand the Khajiit." I shrugged. "You're good allies." "I'm thinking of starting an information guild, and I'd love for the caravan to help gather intel." Akari nodded. "You're based in Solitude?" "Yes," I replied. "I'll keep a logbook, sell you what I find. Fair rates, based on the value and timing. When we travel from Dawnstar to Markarth, we can meet up." I smiled and extended my hand. "That sounds perfect." "You're a friend of the caravan," Akari said, her tail flicking. "It's only right." She climbed the ladder. "I'll check what the bandits have, then we'll talk about what the caravan might need." I nodded as she left the cave. A lucky break, though I knew I might have caused it. With Akari likely taking over some of Rasad's routes while he helped me in Solitude, it felt like my speechcraft kept things from going south. Vec knew he could bend minds with words if he really wanted to, but chose not to, unless absolutely necessary. As he left the cave behind, he rode into Whiterun with a cartload of goods and the stench of livestock in the air. Karjo's whiskers twitched as the Khajiit caravan disembarked. They exchanged brief farewells, uncertain if fate would reunite them. Vec, now alone with his 2 followers, asked if there was anything left to say before they went their separate ways. Canary barely looked up from her notes, distracted by the guards salvaging dragon remains at the watchtower. She murmured, "I'll find you when I need to." I sighed and looked over at Vairi. "What about you?" She just shrugged. "Remember what you said about the companions. I'll be there. You wanted me to speak with someone named Farkas first, right?" Honestly, I couldn't blame her for walking away. I wasn't exactly heartbroken that the group was splitting up either. Whiterun felt like a pivotal place in Skyrim's history, and I was buzzing with excitement to be here. "Good luck with that," I said, giving her a nod. "You can catch up with me at the Bannered Mare by nightfall. I'll get us some rooms, hopefully." The women nodded, and I led Philip to the stables. I shot a look that promised broken hands if anyone dared hurt him. He was a warhorse, but still fragile in one of those Shadowmere types. The walk to Whiterun turned out to be longer than I expected, a sign the city was bigger than I'd imagined. At the gate, a guard stopped me. "What do you want?" he grunted. I raised an eyebrow. "To enter the city." The guard clicked his tongue in annoyance, But before he could speak further, another guard spoke up from the other side. Just let him in. He does this to everyone. He's bored standing out here. The first guard snapped back. Maybe if you actually talked to me, we wouldn't be in this situation. I didn't stick around to hear more and walked straight through the gate. The city looked pretty much as expected. The drunken huntsman and the blacksmith were right where they should be, but behind them were a few scattered houses. The path leading into the heart of the city was only about 1 kilometer long. I walked into the blacksmith shop, where Adrian paused her work to glance at me. "Oh, a new face. I'm Adrian, one of the 2 blacksmiths in town," she said, sizing me up. "I specialize in crafting weapons for adventurers. If you're after a bounty, head to the bulletin board in the merchant district or talk to the companions." "A bulletin board?" I raised an eyebrow. "First time hearing about it." She smirked. "Really? The Jarl set it up after the locals started fighting. The wars caused some rifts." I gave a small smile and extended my hand. "Thanks for the info, Adrian." But before I could leave, I hesitated. "My name's Vec. Have you seen any of my friends?" "One's probably in iron armor," and Adrian's eyes lit up. "You mean Stefan and his buddy? Turns out his friend's the Dragonborn. Guard saw him absorb a dragon's soul." My mind raced. Stefan, a player? But what about his companion? Could the Dragonborn really have no name? Adrienne pointed to a pair walking by. "That's them." She gave a wave. "Hope you catch up with them." I looked at the duo before me. One was covered in iron armor, with the classic Nord beard, and an average height, no doubt the Dragonborn. But something was off. He wasn't speaking, it was the one in leather armor doing all the talking. I found the Dragonborn, but he came with extra baggage. This guy, Stefan, was a typical Nord, nothing remarkable about him. Were they working together for a big score? Was he trying to cash in on the rewards meant for the Dragonborn? I grabbed Stefan's arm. "Hey, mind if I talk to you for a moment?" He blinked, and a big grin spread across his face. "Oh, sure. I'll catch up with Kine at the Bannered Mare in a bit. Maybe another quest, huh?" The Dragonborn gave a nod, so his name was Kine. Stefan scanned me from head to toe. "Nice armor. So, the quest?" I shook my head. "I don't have a quest for you. Stefan, do you know who I am?" He shook his head. "Nope, should I?" I sighed, taking a gamble. "You didn't put any information in, did you?" He blinked, looking at his boots. Then his eyes lit up. "Oh, you're another player. Didn't expect to meet one so soon." "Nice to meet you. I'm Stefan. Well, actually, it's Steven, but I got a little mixed up on the forum. This is my first time playing one of these games." I had a brain tumor, and they offered me a chance to join the beta, so here I am, stuck with a female gender listing. I mean, I had only a month to live, right? It wasn't supposed to be like this, but I grabbed the chance. You're not going to tell anyone, right? I could tell right away that this guy was out of his depth. No experience, no clue, just thrust into this world with no prior knowledge. But then again, who was I to judge? I'm stuck here too. I sighed, trying to make sense of the situation. "You aren't going back, you know. None of us are. We're all stuck here with our baggage, and honestly, I'm not the person you want to talk to about it." He stared at me, clearly confused. "Can't?" "Yeah, can't. We're here for good, whether we like it or not," I explained, feeling a little jaded. "There's no going back. All the players as included came from places messed up in one way or another. Me? I don't even remember half of it. It's better that way. If you want to chat about your life, I'm not your guy." He frowned, but he nodded, getting the message loud and clear. I shook my head. "I get the main plot. Just tell me what you've been through." We decided to head to the Bannered Mare since it might take a while. Stefan gave a reluctant nod and followed me inside. As we entered, the Dragonborn locked eyes with us, his gaze shifting between Stefan and me. I could feel the unspoken tension. I gave Stefan a reassuring pat on the back. "Go talk to him. I'll get us a private table so we can avoid being stared at like we're insane." Stefan nodded, and I moved toward the bar. "Hey, Hulda, can I reserve a table?" Hulda looked up, surprised. "How do you know my name?" I frowned, feigning confusion. "Hulda, I'm here every weekend. I work at Bellathor's." She blinked, a bit flustered. "Really? I must have... Just kidding." I grinned. "I like messing with people. So, can I get a table?" Her face flushed. "Sure, the room under the stairs is usually reserved for VIPs, but go ahead and use it. If you're staying the night, I serve breakfast myself." I grinned at her, knowing my silver tongue had just saved me a bit of gold. I glanced at Stefan, still blabbering away, and paused in mid-sentence. "Before you keep going, any rumors or juicy stories floating around?" Hold a thought for a moment. "Well, there's this guy who shows up every 3 days, challenging folks to drinking contests. No one's won yet, but no one's impressed him either. The Jarl's put out a bounty on some bandits. Oh, and you didn't hear this from me, but one of the Jarl's kids has been sneaking around the palace." My mind whirred as I processed the 3 quests that just popped up. One was for the infamous Night to Remember, the other for the Ebony Blade. I could barter with Sanguine if I could just hold my liquor long enough to win. The ebony blade, though, it was both tempting and dangerous, growing stronger with betrayal. Empowering it with dead thralls had always worked before, but this time, something felt different. I sighed and gave Hulda a nod. Thanks. I might have to deal with those bandits. Can't have them messing with the roads. Had to run in myself on the way to Whiterun. Hulda smirked. No problem. The guards won't bother. They never venture far enough to care. I turned, already planning my next move. The bandit quest wasn't just a typical bounty. It had a strange name. A hunter's prey. I scratched my head. Could it be Knife Point Ridge? I walked over to Stefan and the Dragonborn. I found us a quiet place to talk strategy. They exchanged a glance, and one of them asked, "So we're here to talk about our shared similarities, huh?" The Dragonborn nodded, and Stefan stood up. "Why didn't you say so earlier?" he remarked. I sighed, feeling the tension in the air. "I don't think we're going to get along," I muttered. Stefan raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" he asked. I let out another sigh, walking toward the back room. Once the door was closed behind us, I turned to face him. "Let's start with how you first woke up," I said. Stefan nodded and began his story. "When I first came to, I was in that strange, empty space. Other players were there too, and we went through our skill tree selections. Since I entered under someone else's invitation, I didn't think too much about character creation. I just picked a template that seemed useful for survival." I nodded, understanding. "I went with one-handed, hand-to-hand, and light armor," he continued. "I figured those would work best since I didn't really understand magic." I chuckled. "Good choices, actually." "Hand too. Hand's new to me, but I can see its use. But what I really want to know is what kind of backstory you created and what quests you've done so far." Stefan shrugged. "I didn't make a backstory," he said casually. "But it seems I ended up with one anyway. I woke up on a carriage, heading straight for the headsman's axe. Pretty terrifying. That's where I met Kine, though. That's the name Hadvar gave him. Kine had no memories, was just found near the border." He paused for a moment, then went on. "That's later in the story, though. Right at first, I was on the carriage with Kine, a guy named Rayloff, and another guy who was gagged. Rayloff asked me where I was from, and for some reason, I just knew the answer. 'Nice to meet you. I'm Stefan.' Well, actually, it's Steven, but I got a little mixed up on the form. This is my first time playing one of these games. I had a brain tumor, and they offered me a chance to join the beta, so here I am, stuck with a female gender listing. I mean, I had only a month to live, right? It wasn't supposed to be like this, but I grabbed the chance. You're not going to tell anyone, right?" I could tell right away that this guy was out of his depth. No experience, no clue, just thrust into this world with no prior knowledge. But then again, who was I to judge? I'm stuck here too. I sighed, trying to make sense of the situation. "You aren't going back, you know. None of us are. We're all stuck here with our baggage, and honestly, I'm not the person you want to talk to about it." He stared at me, clearly confused. "Can't?" "Yeah, can't. We're here for good, whether we like it or not," I explained, feeling a little jaded. "There's no going back. All the players this included came from places messed up in one way or another. Me? I don't even remember half of it. It's better that way." If you want to chat, a Stefan fidgeted as he spoke, his voice uncertain. He had taken Lokir's place, the same crime, same fate, but no script. "I was from Rorikstead, stole a horse, got caught." His hands trembled, remembering the dragon. I reminded him that it used to be a set piece, just a dramatic intro in a game. Now, it was real. He nodded. "Me, Kine, Ralof, and Hadvar escaped together. Then we found the Standing Stones. Kine touched when it lit up. I followed, and something changed. Warrior instincts sharpened." He tried to smile, but failed. "Ralof called us special. Both sides offered us shelter. Kine pushed for action, wanted to report the dragon. So we headed to Whiterun to tell the Jarl. 'Bout your life, I'm not your guy.'" He frowned, but he nodded, getting the message loud and clear. I nodded. "After that, I assume you headed to Bleak Falls Barrow." Stefan nodded. "Yeah, I guess you know most of the details." It took us a while to get there because we got a little lost. But when we did, we found this thief who apparently stole a golden claw. It helped us solve a puzzle, leading us to a decorated coffin. Nothing happened at first, but then Kine stepped to a wall, and something happened like a surge of knowledge or power. I nodded. "A word wall. It contains the word fuss. The language is Dovazul, or the Draconic language. I have a guess at what happens next, so you can use the right terminology." Stefan nodded. "Right." After he absorbed it, the coffin busted open, and this undead guy appeared. I interrupted. "A Draugr, a basic undead." Stefan laughed. "Yeah, we killed it. It had the dragonstone we needed for Farengar. After that, we escaped and headed back to Riverwood. Kine wanted to return the Golden Claw. We stayed for a bit and ended up helping some folks around Riverwood. We helped a girl named Camilla who had some guy trouble, and we cleared out a place called Embershard Mine for Embry." I raised an eyebrow. Embry? Isn't he a drunk? Stefan laughed. Yeah, but he was also the head miner at Embershard. I nodded. I see, go on. Stefan continued. After helping some others, we finally made our way back to Whiterun. Halfway there, a guard burst in yelling about a dragon. We ended up joining a hunting party to take it down. The fight was tough, especially for me since I couldn't use a bow or magic. In a tense moment, I ended up crushing the skull of a dragon from the western tower, dropping a stone brick from above, and boom, it was over. A critical hit, perhaps, or the dragon's weakened state after resurrection. Stefan, ever the curious one, kept explaining, revealing that Kine had absorbed something from the dragon. Whispers spread among the guards, and before we knew it, the earth shook, and a new quest appeared. I was about to ask more, but Stefan interrupted with a question. What was that? Shouting. The ground shook. The Greybeards, I explained. Hermits living on the throat of the world, right in the heart of Skyrim. They're summoning the Dragonborn to inherit his destiny, though they reject the other half. I pointed outside where Kine sat. I assume your quest involves heading there with him? Stefan looked relieved. Yeah, I need to help him learn the way of the voice. I could see the changes in him, and the more I thought about it, the more I knew this journey would test him. I scratched my chin, considering the timeline Alduin would likely take his time, wanting fear, followers, and chaos before making a move. It might make the quest harder later on, but the rewards would be greater. I suggest you join the companions, I offered. Things will get crazy, but you're now tied to the main quest. Stefan's face tightened. He had no idea just how tied in he was. If he only knew the world was on the brink of ending. I weighed my words carefully. You'll face more dragons and tougher foes. You'll need power, training, and gear. Joining the companions is your best shot at leveling up. Eventually, they'll talk about the inner circle. When that happens, tell them you'll think it over. After that, follow the main quest. Head to High Hrothgar and meet the Greybeards. Stefan nodded thoughtfully. Join the companions, level up, get better gear, and when they mention the inner circle, ask for time to think. Then, stick to the main quest. He nodded to himself, reassuring himself of his plan. Is it a specific quest, he asked? I nodded. Yes, but I won't spoil it. They'll invite you to the Underforge, though. Stefan nodded, curious but patient. What will you do? I shrugged. What I can. I have my own goals. You, follow the Dragonborn. Don't worry too much about me. Other players, they might try to kill you. I've already killed two myself. I let the weight of my words sink in. It gave him pause, but he quickly spoke up, trying to reassure me. I got it. Don't worry about me. I'll manage. I stood and stretched. I'm off to grab the ebony blade and buy some spells from Farengar. I looked at my companion. We might cross paths at High Hrothgar. You don't need to be the Dragonborn to learn the voice, and that's why I'm heading there. I paused for a moment. Oh, and it looks like Kine is pretty righteous. If you and your friend help the Akavir warriors track down that Redguard woman, don't trust a word she says. You won't understand the politics or the lore about her. Just know she's a liar and a manipulator. The only reason to side with her is if you're looking for extra experience. Stefan gave a blank nod. Level up your speechcraft by selling stuff, and train in restoration magic. Just get a healing spell to start. Actually, if you manage to level up your speechcraft before finishing that Akavir quest, ask the guy who captures the woman if he can train you. Stefan laughed. You're starting to sound like a parent. I smirked slightly, more like backseat gaming. Who doesn't try to coach a newbie now and then? I gave a casual shrug. Anyway, I'll give you more advice if I'm still in the city, but for now, I've got quests to finish. With that, I left the private room. I'd probably sleep there later, since it had a bed and Hulda offered breakfast. I waved at the Dragonborn on my way out of the Bannered Mare. It seemed like helping others was in his nature. Hopefully, that wouldn't lead to any issues down the road. I really couldn't stand the Blades, and sooner or later, they'd meet. I sighed. So many little things. Chapter 66, Blade of Betrayal. Dragon's Reach was impressive. Its grandeur left the original Skyrim's castle in the dust. The architecture was breathtaking, and I couldn't help but wonder what the dragon trap looked like. As I approached the front door, a guard stopped me. State your business. In the heart of Dragon's Reach, the atmosphere was a mix of mystery and homey comfort. Vec Frostwain, a man with an air of controlled chaos, entered his mind more focused on magic than on the usual distractions of the palace. Ignoring the guard's suggestion to head to Winterhold, Vec sought out Farengar, a mage deep in his studies of an ancient dragonstone tablet. As he glanced at the scribbled note states, compositions, and a map, Vec deciphered a chilling message from the tablet. Here lie our fallen lords, until power of Alduin revives. Farengar, startled, demanded an explanation, to which Vec, calm and collected, introduced himself. The exchange was brief, but revealing. Vec had learned the ancient dragon language, a skill that intrigued Farengar. With his dictionary in hand, Vec made his intentions clear not just to study magic, but to acquire powerful spells, setting the stage for a path full of arcane dangers and legendary quests. Do you like this personality? Farengar eyed me closely. Very well. The list of spells I can teach is right here. He slid a parchment toward me. I scowled and asked, "Can I learn the spells you used on the Dragonstone?" He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "If I get my hands on that dictionary, I can copy the spells while you study, but you can't leave the palace with them." I nodded. "I'll take Raise Zombie, Bound Sword, Bound Dagger, Reanimate Corpse, the 3 Novice Destruction spells, and finally Fast Healing and Healing Hands." Farengar clicked his tongue. "Quite the list, especially since you're after my analysis spells as well." I shrugged. "I have a few more requests, but I think I'll let you work your magic on my dictionary." He gave me a sharp look, but then set several books on the table. I pretended to flip through them. They seemed to be written by him. I wondered if I might find an original spellbook from a dragon or a Dremora someday now. That would be fascinating. Just picking them up seemed to unlock the spells within me, and Farengar's personal notes added an interesting touch. An hour passed, and Farengar finally finished copying my dictionary. By then, I had already learned all the spells. In fact, I had so much time that I browsed through his study and found some quest-giving books. When Farengar stopped scribbling, I was surprised. He glanced at me. "Have you already studied them all?" I nodded. "That brings me to my next request, which requires the Jarl's attention. I suggest we head over while he's still on the throne." Farengar sighed, clicking his tongue. "Fine, let's go set up an audience." I frowned. "You'll want this to be private. It's about the Daedric artifact you're keeping in the basement." Farengar recoiled, eyes widening. "What?" "Never mind, a private audience is for the best." He hurried to the throne room, marching straight to the throne. Balgruf made a fuss, then stopped as Farengar whispered something to him. In an instant, Balgruf was on his feet, his gaze locked with mine as he marched toward me. Farengar trailed behind, and they entered the court mage's chambers, the door closing softly behind them. Balgruf's voice was cold, demanding, "How much do you know?" I shrugged. "Not much, but too much. Let's start with the rumors about your son, Nikir. People talk about his odd behavior, his secretive trips. I guess he's either lost his mind or made contact with a Daedra. From there, it's just a matter of speculation." Balgruf let out a long sigh. "I knew this day would come," he muttered. Farengar, standing beside him, gave a reassuring pat. "It was never your fault, my friend." I raised an eyebrow. "So, what's the real story?" They both turned their eyes on me, Balgruf's sharp, Farengar's questioning. Farengar spoke up. "What Daedric item do you suspect it is?" I paused, feigning thought. "If Nikir's been sneaking around, eavesdropping, I'd say it's a Daedric artifact, probably from the Lady of Whispers, Mephala." With a swift motion, I revealed Dawnbreaker, and their eyes widened. "With a patron like mine, I think I know my Daedric artifacts. They tried to speak, but couldn't." I continued, "Give me the key to the locked room. I'll handle the rest." Balgruf frowned, sighed deeply, and finally said, "I suppose that would be best." "Would you care to know why we have it here? Is this conversation helpful so far?" I hesitated, not sure if I needed to know, but the lore seeker in me couldn't resist. "Sure, tell me your story," I said. Balgruf sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. "My wife. I cheated on her. A mistake, nothing more. I used to be an adventurer, and Farengar was with me. We traveled all the way to High Rock, that's when I messed up. One night, I spent time with a nymph." He sighed, lost in regret. "It's every man's dream, right? But not mine. The nymph liked me too much, followed me back to Whiterun. Then, she killed my wife with the ebony blade." Balgruf clenched his fists. "And she was pregnant." I pieced it together. "Some thought it was an accident, but the old game files revealed something strange. Nikir was listed as Balgruf's half-brother. It wasn't your fault," I said. "It was your father's." Balgruf's eyes widened in shock, tears welling up. His heart was shattered by the nymph's magic, but even worse, his wife had been cheating on him too with none other than his own father, the former Jarl of Whiterun. Farengar gave his friend a gentle pat on the back, closing the tale. Balgruf, when his wife revealed the truth, he yanked the blade from her gut like it was calling to him. We found the old Jarl in his chambers, tangled up with a maid. Balgruf cut in. I shoved the blade into his back while he was on top of her. He seduced Milia, then discarded her when she got pregnant. Hrongar didn't want the throne, so I became Jarl. I blinked, stunned. Wow, that's incredible. I don't mean to be rude, but what a story. I was way past polite now, completely thrown off balance. Balgruf chuckled bitterly. I get it, he said, pulling out a key. We've carried this around for years. Maybe it's time to let it go. The key was old, rusted, and twisted. I swear, I'll destroy the blade, I promised, nodding. The two exchanged a look as I stepped out. Balgruf's head dropped as Farengar comforted him. Just as I reached the door, a voice called, "What's going on in there?" I turned and saw Irilith. The Jarl and Farengar were sharing stories from their adventuring days. Vex's journey takes an unexpected twist as he steps into the damp, echoing basement and faces the ominous door. Inside, Mephalah's whisper floats through the air, urging him to restore her blade. Yet Vex, ever the strategist, doesn't fall for the Daedric Prince's usual price. His mind spins a different plan as he reluctantly uses the key to unlock the ebony blade, knowing it holds power far beyond simple use. But, with Sybil's cryptic help, Vex has a grander scheme in mind, fusing it with Dawnbreaker, creating a new weapon, Sable Wave. It's not just a weapon, it's a piece of a larger puzzle, with the Daedric Princes, like Meridia and Mephalah, swirling in the background. Vex's world of manipulation, power plays, and hidden alliances titans, each move more dangerous than the last. Do you like this personality? I couldn't test my theories about the ring. It wasn't in Skyrim. That wasn't really an issue though. I didn't want the ring. It merely gave me insight into a possibility. Mephalah isn't the only one who rewards her champions with the ring. Meridia does as well. An opposing force, simply put. Mephalah still whispered to me, but I couldn't hear it. I grabbed the sword and raised it up. The blade was undoubtedly made of ebony, while Dawnbreaker was forged from moonstone. The two were like yin and yang in my mind, and a devious grin crept across my face. Mephalah seemed almost pleased with my reaction. I could almost laugh. What better way to use the blade than to betray its creator? Mephalah whispered, "Now go, slay friends and foes alike." I said nothing, carefully avoiding anything that might lead to unintended consequences. Instead, I slid the blade into its hilt and stashed it away in my inventory. I still lacked some materials, but before gathering those, it might be wise to push my smithing skill to 100. It was still only at 98. Wait, it had jumped to 99? When did that happen? I checked back and realized inspecting the ebony blade had raised my smithing skill. Was it because I planned to use it as forging material? I shook my head and took a deep breath. Finally, I left Dragon's Reach. I gathered Vairi under the Gildergreen tree and brought her along to hunt bandits. I couldn't find Canary, nor did I think she wanted to bounty hunt. That left me, Vairi, and Philip the horse. Vairi clung to my waist as we traveled to the Silent Moon's camp. I asked, "Vairi, you never mentioned what happened with the companions. Did you speak with Kodlak?" Vairi shivered. "Unfortunately, yes. He told me many things, but he also told me I couldn't be accepted or trained. I don't blame him for calling the gift a curse. After all, he was honest about how he felt. Teaching or taking in strays wasn't exactly their thing." "Wait, he actually told an outsider he hated the gift?" I raised an eyebrow. Vairi continued, "A guy named Vilkas was there too. He mentioned they're looking into a cure for the curse, but honestly, I don't think I want it yet." I nodded, seeing her point. The cure was tied to her father's madness and her imprisonment, things she wasn't eager to revisit. I had promised her a cure if she wanted it, but I understood why she'd turn down theirs, even if they were one and the same. I pulled Philip's reins. "Slow down, girl. The camp's ahead, those ruins. They shouldn't see us from here, but let's be careful and stop now." I glanced at Vairi. "Did you talk to those two?" She clicked her tongue. "No, I wish it was just them. A woman named Ayla and a man named Skior, too. They called me a stray and said they could smell me. Warned me about the Silverhand, but Skior, well, he smelled like my prison." I paused. That was odd. Why would he smell like that? I thought for a moment, could he have embraced the gift too much? Maybe he's taken someone's life? Vairi nodded. "Maybe. Ayla had a similar scent to mine." I stared at her. "Ayla smelled like you?" She hesitated. Yes? Let's drop it for now. Do you like this personality? I'd rather you not invade more personal space. You already have a harness to ride me after all." "Wait, that sounds wrong." A burst of laughter escaped me as I shrugged. "Whatever, I'm gonna try and pick them off with my bow." Vairi froze, eyes locking onto me. "Let me get a little closer then." "You don't have great accuracy, and if they start firing at us, I'd prefer the ability to close the gap." I frowned. "I can hit them." Pulling out my bow, I knocked an arrow. Vairi crouched, moving swiftly to the side of the ruins. I fired, the arrow soaring until it wasn't high enough. Instead of piercing a bandit's skull, it punctured the pot of soup he was cooking. "My soup!" he yelped. Vairi didn't hesitate, already on the move. I fired again, missing to the right, and he pulled out his own bow. Finally, the third arrow hit him in the knee. I winced as I stumbled, tumbling down the stone staircase that made up most of the ruins. With a sigh, I bolted for the stairs. Vairi, meanwhile, clubbed a bandit in the head, while a third charged her, wielding a battle axe. With a snap of my fingers, the stairs warped under his feet, turning into a slide. He slipped down, and I took the opportunity to stab him in the chest with Dawnbreaker. A bandit appeared at the top of the ruins, and I quickly ducked, calling out to Vairi. Mage! I heard her move just in time, a firebolt whizzing past us. Switching magic, I muttered. Go, my child. A flaming wolf emerged, locking onto the mage. The wolf tore through the air, followed by my familiar. The first summon exploded on impact with the mage's ward, and they screamed, I'll kill you for killing my friends! The conversation was brief before my second companion pounced on his arm and started biting down. Vairi followed up by swinging a pendulum and slamming it onto the mage's skull. She turned back, giving me a thumbs up. I heard a groan and turned to see the man I had shot with an arrow stirring. Without hesitation, I stabbed him in the stomach, creating a new hole that put an end to his movements. As I walked up the stairs, I called to Vairi. So, this is the Lunar Forge's home. Anything special about it to you? Being a creature of the night? She shrugged, unimpressed. Not really, it seems pretty lame. I waved her off and pointed towards Philip. Could you fetch the horse? Philip was already trotting over, but it gave Vairi something to do. She shrugged, but I knew she would have just sat on the steps. And set up camp, we're staying here tonight, I added. She clicked her tongue in protest, but it's still 5 hours till dusk. I shrugged and entered the enclosed room at the top of the ruins. I expected it to be open, letting the moonlight shine through, but the forge was hidden, almost buried in the mountain and snow. I wonder if it even works, I muttered. Inside, I found a fully equipped forge with several ingredients scattered about. The room was bright though. Something wasn't right. Looking up, the sky was cloudy, but still the sky. I circled the room and stepped outside, peering back at the forge. Now that's strange, I frowned. The roof of the forge should have been buried, even without the snow and rocks. I ran back to the forge, staring up again. It wasn't the same sky. Maybe I should have spared that bandit. The forge room was a strange place, where the sky outside was clear. Yet inside, the clouds gathered ominously, hinting at an impending storm. I couldn't ignore it. The forge was somehow tied to oblivion, likely to Hircine's realm. His plane had a day-night cycle like Nirn, but this was something else. Was this natural lore? Or just a fabricated mystery? I couldn't be sure. Understanding how the lunar enchantments worked seemed impossible without Hircine's guidance. Holding his ring, I considered testing it. Hircine, always fair and straightforward, was unlikely to create a forge like this for no reason. Why would he allow his followers to build it? With a deep sigh, I examined the forge. The bellows were new, freshly made. A quick dip into the quenching water revealed a bitter mixture of charcoal and salt. Nothing special, something that needed a good scrub and refill. The forge itself, built of gray marble, bore intricate runes across its top. Nothing too remarkable except for the 4 books scattered nearby. One on light armor forging, one on the lunar forge written by someone else, and another on lunar weapons, penned in a completely different hand. What secrets lay hidden within these pages? I picked up the ink, studying its fresh marks basic, unrefined. The bandit mage, a rogue scholar, had used this. Likely stolen low-quality ink and the pheasant feather pen. Definitely scavenged, probably off a plate. The leather-bound notebook was more useful, though. It had seen better days, used to prop up a wobbly grindstone leg, but the strange language in it didn't offer much. Flipping through, I tossed the armor forging book aside and grabbed the lunar weapons one. It was mostly test notes from the bandit, likely interrupting their work on armor enchantments. With no breakthroughs, I switched to the lunar forge notes. Only to get a surprise level up, my smithing skill increased, plus a perk point. Eager to check the skill trees, I noticed I couldn't spend the perk points yet, but I had access to the legendary smithing perk. There were 5: weapons, light armor, heavy armor, accessories, and personal creations. The last perk, personal designs and creativity, was the kicker scaling from 1 to 100. To max it out, 500 perk points. A daunting task, but I had to sleep first. I quickly discovered that the system had a second method: experience. Clicking on the perk points revealed several experience bars, with the one for swords standing out the most. It made sense, considering I'd mass-produced all kinds of swords iron, steel, imperial. I'd forged them endlessly, gaining a ton of experience. The bar showed 671, hinting that I likely earned the perk after hitting 500 experience in forging a specific item. That was good. It meant I could grind forging for more perk points. But it wasn't just swords. Axes, maces, sickles, hammers, daggers. Each weapon had subcategories. Swords alone broke down into short swords, long swords, scimitars, and more, including something called a hamburge. My mind spun with the implications, and I sighed, sitting on the wobbly grindstone. My thoughts turned to the sky, the false sky. I picked up notes on the lunar forge again, but was distracted by a level up. The book spoke of the forge's smoke rising to the sky, touching the ceiling rather than an oblivion gate. Curious, I tossed the light armor forging book into the air, watching it bounce off an invisible wall at the ceiling's crest. It seemed things could go up but not out. A window, not a gate. I scanned the pages of the old book, noting the enchantment described as vampiric in nature, but something was off. The weapons I knew of caused burning instead. I could grab a lunar iron axe and feel the heat under the moons. A thought struck me: this book wasn't written by a bandit. Someone else had a hand in it. Smirking, I knew just how to test the truth. A flash of magic surged through my hands as I cast a spell over the book. The color shifted to white. It meant the book was under a century old. Curious, I turned to the forge, casting the spell again. This time, the magic glowed violet. It was ancient, thousands of years old. The lunar forge was a relic, buried in time. It explained everything, forgotten and overlooked. But that didn't mean I could learn much else. I sighed, getting to work. The Skyforge could have worked, but forging Daedric artifacts under the sun felt wrong. Fire, frost, and void salts were ready. I'd seen Balamund use fire salts, but I planned something more. I had a Daedra heart, glowing mushrooms, spriggan sap, and even vampire dust. No, it wasn't for crafting, but it might help with what I had in mind. The forge pulsed with an energy all its own as I let out a long, tired sigh. My smithing skills were maxed out, and with just a single perk point left to place, I needed rest. Cracking my neck, I stepped out of the forge, where Vairi's eyes met mine. "Find what you needed?" she asked, her tone casual. I nodded. Not so much discovering, more like finding a forge that's away from prying eyes. "This one's stronger at night, a secret advantage." She raised an eyebrow and shrugged. "I started a new batch of soup, by the way. You put a hole in the last pot." I shot her a deadpan look. "I'm sleeping for just an hour. Wake me if I don't get up." With a nod from Vairi, I laid down my sleeping bag, ready for a quick, dreamless rest. The scent of her stirring soup lingered in the air as I drifted off. When I awoke, it was time to place my perk point into the final smithing perk. Dragonbone smithing wasn't as useful here, but I had a plan. I cracked my neck again, feeling the tension leave, and stood up. Vairi handed me a bowl of her latest creation, a meaty soup with a pointed look. "No veggies?" I asked, eyeing the bowl. She shrugged. "Only had venison, and I don't trust your magic vegetables." I raised an eyebrow at her. "So, what's the base?" Her silent gesture pointed to the dead guy she'd used for broth and wine. I sighed, but took the bowl, settling in to eat. Simple, tasty. I stood up and said, "Once you're done, you can either watch me or try reading a book." Vairi gave a nod, remembering the joke book Canary had handed her earlier. It was a clever move, as some jokes were full of cultural words Vairi might not grasp. Not that they were complicated, just unfamiliar. I moved toward the forge room of Silent Moon Camp, where the ingredients I'd prepared earlier were still exactly as I left them. Time to tackle the more challenging stuff. I grabbed the dragon bones and went straight to the grindstone. At first, I wasn't sure if the result would be any good, but my perk in dragon bone smithing worked wonders. As I ground down the bones, I filled a cup with fine dust, set it aside, and started grinding charcoal. Once that was done, I took the frost salts I had earlier prepared, mixed them all together, and watched as the water in the bowl sizzled and frosted over. I dipped my finger in, feeling the chill. Perfect. I added more ingredients: Daedra heart, fire salts, glowing mushrooms, and spriggan sap, then mixed them into a black, gooey sludge. This I spread over the forge, adding even more fire salts. The forge roared to life, and I could feel the heat radiating from it. It was finally time to use the metals. I pulled out the ebony blade, Dawnbreaker, Stalrim, ebony, and the vampiric ring. I'd hardly used the ring's vampiric drain, but the notes about the lunar forge mentioned something about natural vampiric qualities. With everything prepared, I knew the next step was crucial. The forge awaited. Under the ghostly moonlight, I felt the weight of the task ahead. With only one chance to succeed, I began mixing the void salts and vampire dust, coating the artifacts before me. As the forge's heat rose, I reshaped the ancient ring and the ebony blade, slowly fusing them together, each stroke of the hammer reshaping their essence. The process was meticulous, melting the metals, adding more ebony, quenching them in freezing water to cool them at just the right moment. The blade began to take shape, but it wasn't until the last sprinkle of unmixed void salts and a final reheat that the weapon truly felt alive. As I stepped back, inspecting the final creation, a shiver ran through me. But it wasn't fear. It was awe. The blade, now a single, fused weapon, gleamed with a crimson glow. But it was the name that shocked me. What I had forged was something beyond mere metal. It was a legacy. I had expected something more like the Dustbreaker or the Ivory Blade. But what was this, Sable Wave? I squinted at the description for any hints, but it didn't answer much. A masterpiece? I raised the glowing blade and it was easy to see why. Its edge shifted from light blue to a deep ebony. The core a familiar Dawnbreaker's sunshine metal. It wasn't a short sword, and calling it a long sword didn't quite fit either. It was something entirely new, just like the contrast in its colors. I checked the sword's enchantments and couldn't help but whistle. What have I created? I muttered. The UI description said it burns down to the target's soul. Had this been my doing? Or was it the work of the Lunar Forge? I glanced up at the sky, only to realize the moonlight was fading. Wait, no, it wasn't the moon. The window itself was vanishing. Had I drained the forge's magic? I looked into the blade's reflection, sheathed it in silence, and for a moment I wondered aloud, Meridia? Are you watching me? Mephala? But the emptiness around me only deepened. No voices, no answers. It felt like when I first woke up on Nirn. Walking out of the forge, it was almost dawn. Vairi looked up. You done? Took a while, didn't you? I shrugged. Masterpieces don't just appear, Vairi smirked. Sure, mister. Master Blacksmith. I checked my quests. A new one from the notebook told me to translate the book, another task for later. I still had the one pointing to halted stream camp. Perfect for testing Sable Wave and wrapping up a quest. Philip, come here, girl, I called. She snapped out of her daze and trotted over. Vairi raised an eyebrow. She doesn't listen to me like that. What's your secret? I was pretty sure it was my speechcraft. My bonuses must have made her obedient. I shrugged as I climbed onto her back. I'm just good with animals, aren't you? She froze, frowned, then grumbled before joining me on the saddle. Just go. I smirked and urged Philip into a trot. So, where are we headed? This isn't Whiterun, Vairi asked. Another bandit camp, I nodded. Halted stream camp. As we got closer, she spoke again. That doesn't look like a bandit camp, I agreed. It wasn't what I remembered. Then the quest updated. Hunter's Prey. Giving me new info. Looks like I was wrong. They're a small mining village, separated from Whiterun. Vairi blinked. So, not bandits? I shook my head. No, they attacked Loreas' farm. I had expected something more like the Duskbreaker or the Ivory Blade, but what was this, Sable Wave? I squinted at the description for any hints, but it didn't answer much. A masterpiece? I raised the glowing blade, and it was easy to see why. Its edge shifted from light blue to a deep ebony, the core a familiar Dawnbreaker's sunshine metal. It wasn't a short sword, and calling it a long sword didn't quite fit either. It was something entirely new, just like the contrast in its colors. I checked the sword's enchantments and couldn't help but whistle. What have I created? I muttered. The UI description said it burns down to the target's soul. Had this been my doing? Or was it the work of the Lunar Forge? I glanced up at the sky, only to realize the moonlight was fading. Wait, no, it wasn't the moon. The window itself was vanishing. Had I drained the forge's magic? I looked into the blade's reflection, sheathed it in silence, and for a moment I wondered aloud. Meridia? Are you watching me? Mephala? But the emptiness around me only deepened. No voices, no answers. It felt like when I first woke up on Nirn. Walking out of the forge, your scene with the summoned flaming familiars and the combat against the powerful foe captures an intense moment of battle. I noticed that this aligns with the detailed lore of Vec Frostwain, especially the use of powerful, ritualistic magic. The narrative also ties into Vec's personality and powers, particularly his ability to manipulate the environment through artifacts and spell fusion, as seen with his use of the flaming familiar. Would you like to integrate this into the larger context of Vec's journey, or perhaps refine any specific aspects of the fight scene or his strategy here? Do you like this personality as almost dawn? Vairi looked up. You done? Took a while, didn't you? I placed a hand on the teen's shoulder. Shh, it's okay. My companion and I will take care of this. Are these men just in the mine, or are they in the village too? He nodded. They're in the mines, with 4 hostages. We can't do anything because they wear full steel armor. The leader. He's massive. Almost twice the size of anyone I've ever seen. Vairi raised an eyebrow, then shot me a glance. I gave her a look that we understood each other. Vairi jumped off the horse and pointed to the boy. That's Philip. Keep her close. I nodded and unsheathed Sable Wave. The teen's eyes widened. I motioned, lead us in. We don't want to stir trouble with the villagers. He nodded, then ran ahead, guiding Philip along. He tied her to a fence post, along with 2 other horses. As we walked, I observed the camp. Most of the villagers wore makeshift armor made from mammoth leather ruff and hairy. Near the mine entrance was something that looked like a butcher station, but on closer inspection, it appeared to be a workbench for repairing pickaxes and refining ore. The teen stopped at the mine door. Be careful, no one's gone in since those men showed up. The quest updated, and I nodded at the boy. Vairi followed me into the mine shaft. I closed the door behind us and turned to her. Half giants. Rare in Skyrim. Most at Morns are mixed blood, so I've seen one before. These men are probably more hill giant than sea giant. Memories, mine and not mine, swirled in my mind. Half giants existed in Atmora, a land of mixed bloodlines. I pushed the nostalgia away. They're stronger and taller than most. If you can't kill them, aim for their legs, disable them. Vairi nodded, her weapon raised. She went silent, preparing for the battle ahead, and I mirrored her silence. With a silent focus, I cast my alteration spells, fortifying myself. Slipping through the mines, I found my first Targetol, but definitely not human. With a swift slice of Sable Wave, the weapon cut through him effortlessly. I was shocked to see him drop instantly, no sign of struggle. What the heck? Vairi whispered, her jaw dropping. I paused, recalculating the power of my sword. Turns out, its damage was triple that of a normal Daedric weapon. The half-giant barely knew what hit him. Moving on, Vairi shot me a look. If you're just gonna slice through everyone, we don't need stealth. I glanced ahead at the mine. I think only the leader is left. Soon, we stood by a half-eaten mammoth, its legs and head roasting over a fire. Vairi looked at it hungrily as I peered past the meat. The leader of these half-giants stood, glowing light flickering in his hands, but he didn't seem to notice us. I crept up behind him, though his low growl startled me. Still, I pushed forward, my sneak skills kicking in. With a grin, I slashed through his legs. He screamed and flung his arm back, hitting me in the shoulder. I was thrown back, crashing onto the rocky floor with a groan, only to be quickly pulled up by Vairi. His strength was unbelievable. My eyes shifted toward the legless man ahead of us, gripping an axe high over his head, still standing at a table much taller than normal. His voice was rough as he taunted, "So, the villagers finally sent someone to do their dirty work." His gaze flickered toward a wall of rocks, and I narrowed my eyes. "Where are the hostages?" I demanded. His response was a spiteful, "Fuck you," but it was clear he was hiding something behind those rocks. "Vairi, dig them out," I instructed. His sneer grew as he warned, "Get any closer, and I'll gut you." A smile crept onto my face as I turned on the charm, asking, "You're gonna bleed out soon, so why not tell me what a half-giant is doing here? Don't they live in Skyrim?" He laughed darkly, tossing his helmet aside, revealing tattoos on his face. "A forsworn," I muttered, recognizing the mark. I suppose it's not surprising they'd have half-giants now that they turn into hag-ravens. The man spat, this time blood spilling from his lips. "Not a half-giant, boy. I was a Breton. Before they started making us experiments." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "So, you fled? Or were you banished?" His face grew paler. "Why do you care?" I grinned, always ready for a good quest. The one I was on now was called A Hunter's Prey, though it didn't make much sense at first. But who knows? Maybe you have something more interesting for me. He looked dazed, his mind a little lost. A hunter's prey. "Yeah, I guess I'd be the prey," he mumbled, eyes shifting uncomfortably. "The forsworn group I ran from calls themselves the Hunters. They're near Markarth, up in the mountains. If you promise to kill them all, I'll mark it on a map for you." I smirked. "I'd love to, but you'll have to drop that axe before I can get close enough to show you the map." He paused, glancing at his legs and then sighed, tossing the axe aside. "That sword, what is it? I shouldn't be bleeding out this fast," he pointed at his legs. I looked down at the sword in my hand, Sable Wave. A crimson light pulsed within it, draining him still. The initial strike had taken his health, but it was sapping his stamina too. I glanced back at him. "Sable Wave. It's a Daedric artifact." He chuckled weakly. "Never heard of such a wicked blade. Feels like it's stealing my soul, or my will to live." "Bah! Just show me the map." So I did, and as his finger landed on a mountain, I received a new quest, but then his finger slid off the map and he slumped, lifeless. Could this quest have been solved without violence? Maybe. But as I turned to see where Vairi was digging, the thought faded into the cold air. I thought for sure those hostages were buried alive. The quest sat before me, and I couldn't help but notice the change. One objective was gone killing the forsworn hunters with Bomir, the half-giant leader. But instead of failing, the quest evolved. Now, I was to use the poacher's axe to behead the hagraven of Hunter's Crest. The axe felt heavy with purpose. A weapon of legend, it was designed to slay animals with incredible precision, especially those protected or endangered. Its enchantment was savage, amplifying its power tenfold against its prey. My mind wandered. Should I craft a two-handed weapon of my own? My thoughts turned to the gold, jewels, and potions I had gathered. Among them, a rare spellbook gleamed. "Transmute!" I smirked, pocketing it. As I turned to Vairi, I asked if she had any luck. She growled in frustration, throwing another boulder away. "Let me check if they're even alive," I muttered. Casting detect to reveal glowing orbs a sign of life. They're alive. Go get the villagers. Let's get them out of here before anyone else notices. Vyre sighed, nodding. They better reward us for this, she grumbled. After returning from Halted Stream Village with some gold, I reported back to the Jarl in Whiterun. Surprisingly, the gold I received was less than what the villagers had given me. Scamming the Jarl out of a little extra seemed fair enough. Still, the Jarl seemed oddly wary of me, especially when I was near Sablewave. He probably thought I was carrying that ebony blade. While I relaxed under the Gildergreen tree, Canary startled me by grabbing my shoulder. She smirked, calling me paranoid. I shot back, insisting I was just writing my thoughts, not plotting to stab someone. Canary wasn't buying it, but she shared something intriguing she had learned from witnesses that over 100 dragons had been resurrected, and many were in Skyrim. One of them, twice the size of the others, had destroyed Helgen. My theory? It had to do with the Dragonborn's presence. I couldn't shake the feeling that Alduin's actions, ironically, had spared Kine from the headsman's axe. How did he know the Dragonborn was there? Canary shot me a curious glance, clearly wanting answers. I just gestured toward Joravaskar. Kine, the Dragonborn, join the companions. I sent him and a guy named Stefan there to learn the ropes of combat. Stefan's a lazy bum and Kine's got amnesia, but maybe the companions will toughen them up or something. Canary stared at me but didn't ask any more questions. I shifted the topic. We'll head through Helgen toward Riften, where we'll start our real work. I nodded, already planning the route. I'm considering a detour to Orphan's Rock. It's full of witches, and I'm thinking of dealing with a coven to recruit one of them, even though I'd rather avoid the Hagravens. Still, there's a bounty on the Hagraven with a dagger called Nettlebane. Canary raised an eyebrow. Is there a bounty for it? Of course! I smirked. Why do free labor? The bounty's for the Hagraven, listed by a priest in Whiterun. She nodded. Fair enough. I stood up. Well, night's falling. I'm gonna grab a drink. Vyre perked up, but I had no intention of buying her anything. I thought about visiting the alchemist shop again, but after that last purchase of a Daedra heart, I figured I'd pass. Cracking my neck, I decided to shift gears and head to the Bannered Mare. I found Sam Gwevin and sat next to him. He turned slowly, a grin forming on his face. You look like you can handle your liquor. Think you can beat me in a drinking contest? In a dim-lit tavern, a Daedric prince challenges with a sly smile, betting his prize staff. But the protagonist, unimpressed, only sees it as another empty offer. With a confident grin, they dismiss the idea of wielding such a relic, preferring swords and magic over staffs. The Daedric prince, intrigued, promises that this contest holds a real prize, but the protagonist remains unbothered, knowing the tricks behind such temptations. The stakes rise as the prince offers to change the terms if defeated, but only if the rules are followed. A mysterious drink materializes, 9 cups of deep red liquid, as they agree to the challenge. The atmosphere crackles with tension as both sides prepare for a contest where anything go except for the alcohol, which must be drunk. The deal is set, and the game begins with freedom on the line for both. As they prepare for an unpredictable and dangerous encounter, Vyre walked into the Bannered Mare, and I noticed her immediately. She waved us over, catching Sam's attention too. Sanguine, ever the curious one, glanced at her and then at me. I grinned. Vyre? You haven't had a drink in a while, have you? She blinked and nodded, uncertain. Yeah? I pushed a special batch of Clovian mead towards her. My friend here made some. Want to try? Sanguine's eyes lit up, a smirk spreading across his face. A rare kind, he said, eager to share. Vyre sat down, intrigued, and after a moment's hesitation, took a gulp. Her eyes widened. This is pretty good, she declared, downing another tankard without a second thought. Sanguine chuckled. It hits fast. Maybe slow down a bit? But she wasn't listening, already reaching for more. I leaned back as Vyre grabbed a hunk of bread, buttered it, and shoved it in her mouth. Her face flushed, and she shot me a suspicious look. Wait, you're not trying to get me drunk on purpose, are you, Vec? Both Sanguine and I looked at her, curious. Vyre was more focused on the challenge than on the world around her, finishing off yet another tankard in less than an hour. Canary took a seat beside her, eyeing her with concern. Is she okay? She asked. I slid a tankard her way. Yeah, she's just enjoying some Clovian mead. Want some? Canary hesitated but took a sip, her face flushing. This is pretty good. She smiled. I think I can only handle one, though, I nodded. That's fine, just enjoy what you have. Sanguine turned his gaze on me. You going to have a drink? Looks like your win's coming up soon. I shrugged, grabbed a cup, and downed it in one go. I pushed the remaining tankards to Vyre, who was starting to lose herself. I patted her on the back, asking, You all right? She looked at me with blurry eyes, smiling. Yes, I feel great. With that, she downed the last of the drink. I shot a knowing smirk at Sanguine, who laughed as his eyes shifted into an eerie red and black. All is fair, he muttered. I should have made the rules stricter. But hey, I think I'll get a show tonight. Get her to drink one more cup, and I'll throw in an extra prize. My curiosity piqued, but a question lingered. What exactly did he have in mind? The Daedric Prince of Depravity offers 3 disturbing options. An aphrodisiac for a potentially exciting night, a grotesque act in a bathroom, or a chilling choice of blood her own. The choice of the aphrodisiac seems harmless enough, so I take it, watching as the cup fills with a strange pink liquid. A sigh escapes the prince as he explains that it's a fruit only found in Oblivion, though he hints at much darker prizes should I have chosen differently. As I sit with Canary, who seems less than steady, I tease her about her tolerance for alcohol. She insists she can handle it, before snatching the cup and downing it in defiance. But the night is far from simple, and what follows promises more than just a drunken escapade. I leaned against the bar. It was a fruit-based brandy. I smirked, watching her face twist in emotion. She stood, gave a small nod, and said, I'm going to bed, good night. She stumbled slightly, then hurried off. I turned back to Sanguine, who was smiling but sighed. I was hoping for more, he said. Looks like the only fun one is that werewolf. Clever trick, though. If you were a werewolf, it wouldn't have worked. He paused, eyeing me. The liquor adjusts to your tolerance. Too bad. So, he could tailor it by race or species. Makes sense. Sanguine's smile widened, creepy as ever. Your prize! He handed me a jewelry box. I took it, and he warned, Many princes are watching. Avoid Beathia and Molag Bal. They don't play fair. He hesitated. Oh, and Vermina wants to meet you. With that, he vanished into thin air. I stared around, but he was gone. Vermina wanted to meet me? And that warning about Beathia and Molag Bal echoed in my mind. Beathia had good artifacts, but Molag Bal? Never. I opened the box, raising an eyebrow. Inside, a ring. Familiar, yet foreign. I recognized it as the Death Dealer's Fetites enchantment. Simple. Escalating Fet. The ring would boost my stamina regen, recover fatigue, and enhance spell potency over time during conflict. It turned out the object was a cursed artifactor ring tied to dark deeds. Naturally, curiosity led me to equip it onto the belt of many uses. My gaze fell on the second item, a red masquerade mask, crafted from roses and nightshades. The name was fitting, amalgamates Deception. Its power mirrored that of an ancient relic, allowing the wearer to alter their appearance, gender, race, species through a deceptive illusion so potent that even the wearer believed the change. I equipped it to the belt, too. Sanguine's game had proven interesting, but there was always a price. As I pondered his motives, a sudden impact from behind knocked the air from my lungs. Viri, utterly intoxicated, had wrapped herself around me. Sush! Great! She slurred. Despite the Daedric Prince's claims of harmless alcohol, the effects were clearly at work. I scooped Viri up, intent on checking on Canary, suspecting there was more to Sanguine's challenge than I understood. What was his real play here?